Okay, here we go, folks. Uh, Hello, welcome everybody. If you're just joining us, we're just going to wait a minute or two just to let other people in. If you've just joined us, welcome. If you'd like to pop into the chat where you're tuning in from, I'm calling in from Sydney, but feel free while we're waiting for people to join to say hi in the chat and let us know where you're tuning in from. Welcome. Got a few more people coming through the waiting room. Welcome, everybody. Great. So we've got people joining us from Queenstown. Awesome. Tauranga, Auckland, Central Coast, Australia. If you just joined us, welcome. We're just going to give participants a couple more minutes just to come in through the waiting room. If you've just joined us, feel free to throw in the meeting chat where you're tuning in from. We can see we've got people from all over the place, so that's great. Just give another minute or so. Welcome, everybody. Okay, well, we might start then. Welcome, everybody. My name's Patrick Pheasant, and I'm from LanguageCert. I'm the head of Education Partnerships Australia, New Zealand, and it's great to be here hosting together with English New Zealand an assessment webinar, sharing our stories. I think it's a great topic, and I'm really happy to see something like this happening in New Zealand. In Australia, we've been running a very similar event for a number of years now, and it's just been great to see the assessment literacy of teachers increasing through opportunities to share professional development and share ideas around assessment. And it can be a bit of a dry subject, but it's really great to see the quality of our presenters today, and we're really excited to be working on this project with English New Zealand. So I'd just like to introduce the team and the presenters today. I'm joined by Fraser Cargill, who's Oceania and East Asia Director for LanguageCert. And also Kathy Jones will be doing the keynote presentation today. Unfortunately, Kathy wanted to do it in person, but she's had to go back to the UK. So she's actually recorded her plenary. So we'll be playing that shortly to start off the webinar today. And then we've got some amazing presentations by Dr. Lorenz Polsch, Diana Chozak, Dr. Aniko Gal, and Ian Mazakin. And thank you very much to the presenters for putting in the abstracts and preparing a presentation today. Um, just moving forward here. This is what we're going through today. We're having a quick welcome, and then we'll jump into the plenary speaker, and then each of the presenters will have 20 minutes to present. And then at the very end, there'll be a vote and announcement of the winning presentation. This will be done by Slido. I'll put up on the screen a QR code, and if you're in a room by yourself, you can take a photo of that. But if you're in a room with a bunch of teachers, I know some of you are calling in as groups. By all means, you can all use your phones to make a vote for the winning presentation. Now, the winning presentation, the prize is actually for the most engaging presentation. The winner will receive support from LanguageCert to attend and present at the University English Centres of Australia PD Fest. There's two opportunities. One is in Sydney in July, or the Assessment Symposium in Melbourne in October. Now, keep in mind as you're watching the presentations today, these are the things we want you to consider for your vote: the clarity of the presentation, audience engagement, practicality and relevance, and innovation and creativity. So Without further ado, I'd like to welcome Darren Conway from English New Zealand to give us a quick welcome, and then we'll start with the plenary. Thanks, Darren.
Thanks, Patrick. Feel somewhat redundant here, other than to thank again the speakers for putting themselves up and for everybody today. But also, in particular, I want to say thank you to LanguageCert, to Patrick and Fraser, long-term friends of the industry in this part of the world, for having the idea for this and putting together the resources to get it going, and for sponsoring our plenary speaker, Kathy Jones, who you'll hear from soon. So thank you to them. Thank you to Kim for her role in helping to coordinate with Patrick as well. It's great that we've got such a good turnout. Really, really heartening to see so many people interested in assessment. Well, professional development, hopefully also interested in assessment. I won't hold anybody up any further. Well, thank you also to LanguageCert for the very generous sponsorship. It's a great idea, and it'll be something that I'm sure we can do again in the future. So I will just, with that, say once again thank you and turn over to Lorenz and Nick, I think.
Sure, it'll be Kathy first. So I'm just going to
sorry.
load up Kathy and we can
jump
see
over
her
your
presentation.
Video. Yeah.
No worries. Here we go.
I have to pop out to an auditor, everybody, so if you don't see me, that's why. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, wrong one. My bad. Hear the sound?
Hi, welcome to my presentation on the need for oracy in the age of AI. My name's Kathy Jones and I'm an assessment development specialist working at LanguageCert. I've been developing LanguageCert Academic, which is a test of English language proficiency for HE admissions. Just to sort of set the scene a little bit, I want to make the point that education is about partnership. It's a partnership of trust, responsibility, and importantly, dignity. Examinations and this whole ecosystem in which we're working in assessment is built on trust. Trust that the exam is doing what it's going to do, that it's fair, reliable for all stakeholders. And I'm going to argue that the growing use of AI or misuse of AI is antithetical to this trust. So, what is the situation in this post-pandemic world? During the pandemic, there was a need for take-home assessments, for assessments that could be taken, high-stakes assessments that could be taken at home. When I'm talking about AI, I'm talking about large language model, generative artificial intelligence. I'm not talking about the type of AI that recognizes whether the student is the right student taking the test. I'm talking about the type of AI that students may use or misuse to complete these take-home assessments. It's a universal problem, but it does vary from country to country, institution to institution, and faculty to faculty. So the situation in New Zealand and across institutions and faculties in New Zealand may differ, but they may be experiencing the same kind of issue. What are the issues? This use of AI, right, is time consuming to detect. It takes a lot of resource to detect this misuse of AI. And even if it's detected, it's even more difficult, time-consuming, and problematical to prove. It undermines trust. I said at the start, education is about this partnership of trust. The whole ecosystem is built on trust. And if we cannot trust that the student has gone through the process that we are expecting them to have been through, that trust is undermined. And it undermines the purpose of education, ultimately, sadly, resulting in missed opportunities for students. So what are the other issues that make this such a problem? When students go to university, working on in their chosen subject area, they need to work that subject area out for themselves by attending lectures, seminars, discussions, reading. They need to be able to write and verbalise that knowledge and understanding. Writing isn't easy, okay? Writing in your first language isn't necessarily easy. Writing in your second, third, or sometimes even fourth language really isn't easy. Add in the fact that students are often writing under pressure. They're under all sorts of different pressures to perform. They may be under academic pressures if they feel they're struggling. They may be under financial pressures because they're feeling, there's been a lot of investment in this opportunity for them to study in an English medium institution. They want to do well. And there are emotional pressures too, and perhaps a combination of all three. So writing under that kind of pressure, you can see how AI and just putting your task title into ChatGPT and eliciting something, you can see how that might be perceived as an easy way out. Asking that ChatGPT to kind of verbalize that knowledge and understanding. But the truth is, AI can't do this for them because it's all about the process of writing. It's if you aren't writing, you aren't thinking, and if you aren't thinking, you aren't learning, and that's what university is all about. The horrible truth is that AI knows nothing, teaches nothing, and gives students nothing of worth. So in terms of thinking about what our guardrails might be for this is where I'm positioning Oracy as a vehicle or a catalyst to develop critical thinking that's required to be able to use this tool for the better. Having said that, what does it offer? What does AI offer? Its developers claim it provides the answer to any question. Put any question in. I argue this is quite far from the truth. What AI does give us is a response, for sure. It gives us an answer, but quite possibly not the answer. And that's because AI has no knowledge. Intelligence is actually a bit of a misnomer. It doesn't have experience. Can't tell right from wrong or truth from fiction. It's based on algorithms and probability. Essentially, an exercise in form. You may have heard the term internet slop, which is being used increasingly to kind of describe the output of large language models. And it's really important to remember that these are not coming from a place of any knowledge or any creativity, both essentially human characteristics. Yeah, it can put together grammatically correct sentences that read quite naturally, quite good. It can build sentences, but it's not constructing meaning. And by meaning, I mean deeper meaning, reflective of some kind of thought process. You often find when you ask it a question, its starting point will be to give you a list of bullet points, short, snippy summaries of concepts and themes, factoids that may or may not be complete nonsense. It doesn't have what the wonderful linguist Steven Pinker describes as arcs of coherence. So that is the artistry of good text, carefully structured, the linkage to and from, the telling of a narrative from a human perspective of experience. It's full of hyperbolic adjectives and superlative modifiers. But what are they actually signifying? They're not coming from a place of kind of personal expression. It's just very over-the-top language. And I quite like this term, internet slop, as being a good way to describe it. And as an example of this kind of searching for meaning, but always search for meaning. You can ask it anything. Okay, so just as a little experiment, I thought of an meaningless, absurd expression. And I said, a trifle of stacked plates. Meaning? And this is what it came back with. It told me, this is a lovely and evocative phrase. A trifle of stacked plates suggests a few different but related ideas. It can imply a small quantity, a trifle, small amount. So a trifle of plates likely means a small number of plates piled on top of each other, not a huge imposing stack. Neatness and order, delicacy or lightness. And, you know, in summary, it says, in essence, a trifle of stacked plates paints a picture of a small, neat or delicate or simple pile of plates. So it's looking for meaning. It's presenting this back to us as though this is in fact a lovely, well-known and evocative phrase, but it isn't. It doesn't mean anything. And another one. Try another phrase. A remembered analogy of forgotten metaphors. It's basically like word salad, yeah, just putting stuff in to see what it can do. A remembered analogy of forgotten metaphors. Meaning? Again, I get some praise. That's a beautifully paradoxical and thought-provoking phrase. Let's break it down. And it goes on to give me this kind of pseudo explanation for what that phrase means. It doesn't say this is not a common phrase in English, okay? What it's giving me is a sort of pseudo explanation. It's looking for meaning where in fact there isn't any. So where are we? The AI genie is out of the bottle. It's here to stay. So given that, what are the skills that we need to nurture? And as test developers, how can we promote these? By definition, including a skill or an aptitude in a test is by definition promoting it somehow. Students want to pass the test. They're going to practice the kind of things that are in that test, in that form. So what are the things as test developers we can do to foster, nurture the kind of skills that are going to enable students to survive, thrive and flourish in this world of AI? Okay, I heard this really good thing, which was like, they say that if you're using AI to produce your written assignments, it's a bit like taking a forklift truck to the gym to lift your weights. It's not about the outcome, okay? It's about the thought and the process of constructing that written response. So I say we need to start thinking about what we can do to complement written assessments. This is to stand alongside written assessment as a fundamental in academic study. But what else can we do to nurture the kind of skills that are going to help students? And I think that for me, there's a very strong case emerging to do something, revive the viva. And by viva, I mean a kind of spoken oral defense of a written argument, okay? And I see a very clear need for oracy. What is oracy? Referred to as the fourth R of education. I turned to the Oracy Education Commission in the UK. They do a lot of work in relation to primary education, and this has been a big movement in primary education. But why would it stop? Why would we stop promoting oracy after primary? I think that it's equally as essential in higher education and in English language education as it is in primary. Okay, the primary is a good starting point, and we as educators can build on that. So the Oracy Education Commission defines oracy as articulating ideas, developing understanding, and engaging with others through speaking, listening, and communication. Okay. Jeff Barton, who is the chair of the Oracy Education Commission, gave this really passionate speech where he said, parents want it, the economy demands it, democracy needs it, teachers welcome it, and our children deserve it. The time for oracy for every child is now. And I suggest the time for oracy for every student is now. Okay. So going back to ChatGPT, I thought I'd ask ChatGPT for a definition of oracy. We've heard what the Oracy Education Commission say. Unlike the trifle of stacked plates, I thought it came back with something fairly sensible here. Oracy is the ability to express oneself fluently and effectively in spoken language, encompassing speaking and listening skills. Pretty good. Then we went on, ChatGPT, why is oracy important? A leading question. And this is what I got back. Again, I didn't think too bad. We're not in the trifle of stacked plates territory yet. Oracy is important because it enhances communication, agree, critical thinking, agree, and social interaction, enabling effective participation in personal, academic, and professional contexts. For me, in terms of the test construct we have developed for LanguageCert Academic, this is bang on. Okay, so far so good. Why is oracy important to HE? Slightly more nuanced question for ChatGPT to grapple with here. But yeah, oracy is crucial in higher education as it fosters academic discussion, collaboration, and the ability to articulate ideas clearly, preparing students for professional and societal engagement. There isn't much in there with which I disagree. Don't know how you feel about it in the audience, but so far for me, these definitions are okay, and it's working for me to use this. I'm able to critically look at what I'm seeing, and I'm quite comfortable with it. Then if you try and lead the algorithm in the other way with a kind of a question that's framed in a slightly different way, ChatGPT, why isn't oracy important anymore? And of course, the system is inclined to agree with me. It says it may seem less emphasized today due to the rise of digital communication, self-paced learning, and a focus on written and technical skills over verbal interaction in some contexts. And for me, this is where I start to see things fragmenting up a little bit. This is straying a little bit more into the kind of word salad territory, searching for meaning. It's searching to answer my question about why oracy isn't important anymore. And it's chucked in some things, digital communication, very generic, loose, non-specific, self-paced learning, again, not that specific, and a focus on written and technical skills. In some contexts, it's all quite vague, okay? And you need to have a kind of critical mind to be able to look at this and go, what does this actually mean? Okay, so what can we do? We've got this tool, but in order to use it, there are certain skills that we need to cultivate in students to enable them to approach this kind of output, the internet slop, with some criticality. So I thought I'd take a second to just go through some of the features of the LanguageCert academic test to show how those are kind of embedded in the test we've developed. So let's take a look at how oracy skills are embedded in the LanguageCert academic test, starting off by looking at the listening. In LanguageCert academic, I think it's important to sort of note that in defining what it is that we want to test, we've taken a really expansive view of what students actually need to do when they get to university. And we have a number of different domains featuring in our definition of academic English. And so that can comprise everything from interacting with your fellow students, with flatmates, right through to interactions with the dean of your university or tutors in a seminar. And those include a range of different registers and levels of formality. Okay, you need to be able to use the right tone with the right person. You need to be able to discern the right tone. So in our listening, we include representation from a range of all these different scenarios, all in an academic context, but across a breadth of different types of experience that the student may have when they're at university, as well as different levels of formality. We also include a range of accents, representative of all the places where English language is spoken, and a group discussion task. So the last part does include a 3-speaker task where you're listening to 3 different speakers, co-constructing meaning, positioning their argument, defending their own argument, and in hearing these extracts in a receptive way, that is obviously going to inform and help students understand what it is that they're going to be doing in a productive sense in the speaking test. The speaking test for LanguageCert Academic, again, a four-part test conducted by a human interlocutor, and it includes an overall mark for task fulfillment and communicative effect awarded by the interlocutor, okay, and double weighted. This puts communication, so essentially, the main function of oracy, at the very heart of the test, and double weights it. Okay, and we look for a range of speaking skills, again, in that representative range of academic contexts that come into our definition of what a student needs to do when they're at university. The last 2 tasks that students engage in, candidates engage in, they are asked follow-up questions by that human examiner, who by that point in the test has managed to gauge a fairly good idea of where that candidate is at in terms of their ability and their confidence. And in a very human, supportive, communicative way, they're able to use their degree of autonomy within that interlocutor framework to just elicit that little bit more from the student, to probe slightly, to test that they've understood their argument, to really zoom in on that kind of critical thinking, and to really understand, can you defend your argument? Can you extend it? Can you counter your own argument? And if you think about it, all of those skills are going to be exactly the kind of skills that will be essential for a Viva type support to written assessment. So if we are moving in this way towards an oral defence of your written work, and using oracy as a way to really build critical thinking skills, this is a lovely vehicle to promote practice of those kind of skills, and all conducted by a human. So you've got this kind of one-to-one communication at the very heart of it. So I love this cartoon. We used it, it became kind of synonymous for my dad's kind of very literal mentality in my family. But I think it really kind of exemplifies why we need these critical thinking skills. We saw the internet slop, right? And we can't take that all at face value. If we're going to use the artificial Gen AI as a tool to write, to help us inform our content, we need to take a very critical view to be able to identify the slop, to question what we call those hallucinations, fake references, fake court cases, kind of imagined content that is actually a feature of generative AI. And we need to, we need to be able to not take such a literal view and be spoon-fed. And I love this Far Side cartoon. I guess that says health. So the old rescue guy is going to go. Part of the definition of what test takers need to do when they get to university, I spent a long time thinking about the wider extra linguistic, if you like, transferable skills. And again, back to it, sort of everything starts with children for me, but back to UNICEF, who created this fabulous framework of transferable skills. They're often called soft skills, which is a term I hate because I think these are actually the skills that make us human. I would be more inclined to call them something like skills for humanity, if that doesn't sound too pretentious. I've also heard them called power skills. 21st century skills you may have heard of, but that seems a bit like out of date, given we're kind of a quarter of the way through the 21st century already. But if you look at these categories of transferable skills, you've got cognitive skills. So that's our ability to problem solve, make informed choices, set plans and goals. And oracy skills are going to support that. Social skills, interaction, communication, collaboration, conflict resolution, and negotiation. These are all skills that are going to be wholly supported by having good oracy skills. And similarly, emotional skills, coping with stress, understanding your own emotions as well as the emotions of others, and the ability to empathize. This is all stuff that we can do through spoken language, spoken communication. UNICEF referred to them in their report as the magic glue. They don't exist in isolation. So whatever discipline which you're studying, you need some of this glue, the transferable skills, to be able to survive, thrive, and flourish in what you want to do. And I see, there's a great benefit in taking this kind of approach. And for me, working in assessment, this is where it gets quite interesting, because thinking about the construct, and do you remember I said in assessment, by choosing to assess something, you are by definition kind of promoting it, kind of familiarizing people with it, raising its profile. So if you're going to do that, I want to do that at the point which is going to add most value for the learners taking the test. If you're going to prepare something, let's prepare something that is going to be part of your toolkit. Yeah. And the way I kind of envisaged this was thinking about what are those three big domains that you're going to come up, going to be sort of moving between when you're at university. And that's the academic domain. You're also thinking about your professional domain, that, one of the main reasons now for going to university is careers, right? And also personal well-being. And there are some shared transferable skills that sit at that intersection. And many of these are kind of supported and enabled by strong oracy skills. So to kind of summarize the benefits, if you like, of oracy, to sort of really sort of ram it home in this presentation, I think just to go over these: academic success, increased oracy skills improves learner retention and learning. It supports literacy, promotes collaborative learning. You can talk to your peers, you can work in a group, boosts critical thinking. This happens in real time, okay? When you're listening to me now presenting, you're evaluating what I'm saying. You're not just asking AI to listen to me and then give you the points you maybe wish that you were, but it's boosting your critical thinking, okay? Improves your confidence, helps develop those social skills, including empathy, fosters creativity. People with good oracy skills have really good professional advantages. So in terms of like how you kind of interact in the workplace, if you want to sort of take a kind of leadership path and career advancement. It promotes inclusion and engenders respectful dialogue. Enables you to express yourself emotionally. If you think about it, for students starting university, for many students, the only access that they'll have to kind of mental health support services would be through English. So you're going to need to be able to articulate how you're feeling. just to be able to access some of those really important services for our young people at university. In terms of oracy, to using oracy, promoting oracy skills as a way to counter concerns around academic integrity, yeah, reinstating oral examination is resource heavy, okay, but arguably so is investigating the misconduct. And I kind of see this as sort of taking preemptive action over retrospective penalty. And, you know, investigating misconduct is super stressful for the students concerned, for the staff having to put those kind of procedures and go through the processes for proving misconduct. It's stressful and it kind of lacks dignity. Whereas being asked to give an oral defence has all these wider benefits for the students. And I'd say the benefits that are across education, across personal development, and they're there for professional life. For me, it's an absolute no-brainer to promote oracy in the age of AI. And last of all, I wanted to just kind of situate all of this within the context of something that I've only discovered the kind of theory of radical kindness quite recently, but it's something that is having a big impact on how I think about our practice as educationalists, and for me as an assessment developer. And I heard at a conference recently in the UK, Dr. Jenna Mittelmeier, who has some really interesting work around this area of radical kindness. She described it as caring for the souls of one another in our practice. And I was thinking about this in terms of assessment development, and it's kind of helped me to see what I'm doing in a new context. And the key points I wanted to be able to kind of share with you to finish today are that it's really important that when we're talking about oracy skills and fostering critical thinking and enhancing, nurturing problem solving, this isn't bestowing these wonderful skills on a group who are lacking in some way. Okay, we're not seeing those students as being in deficit. This is nurturing what I think language learners already have. This is coming from the point of view of acknowledging the linguistic knowledge and transferable skills that language learners bring, okay, but as a test, first and foremost, of English language proficiency, it's surfacing the right linguistic repertoire, the right grammatical skills, the right vocabulary to be able to access those skills. Okay, and it's not framing this in any way as a critique of international students. I talked at the beginning about that complex, the complex range of reasons that might mean that an international student just doesn't feel they have recourse to anything other than just putting the question in AI. The financial pressure, the emotional pressure, the personal pressure to succeed. We need to think about what those scenarios are and how we can kind of investigate what's going on there in terms of those pressures. This is also important when we're talking about oracy, that all voices must be valued equally. This isn't about imposing a kind of norm. I'm from Cambridge, a kind of Cambridge English norm that everyone's going to be assessed against. This is about valuing all voices, authentic voices, regardless of linguistic background, and fostering confidence and pride. So students are able to communicate and express themselves in their authentic voice. And really celebrating that reciprocal value that international students bring. Education is about empathy. It's not about being othered. The value that international students bring is immeasurable to the domestic students, and vice versa. Yeah, it's a great opportunity to go and study in an English language, in an English speaking institution or an English speaking country, but what that body of international students bring to the home students is equally magnificent. And it's about intercultural competence, how we learn from each other, and we can do that with increased communication skills. And radical kindness, it sounds kind of saccharine sweet, and I don't want to kind of position it like that. Radical kindness, I think, is a kind of revolution. I'm thinking of it as a revolution. It's about respecting one another's humanity and being seen and treated as human. And that's something that AI will never be able to do. Very recently, this popped up in something I was reading, a 45-year-old IBM principal. And I thought, yeah, this is still pretty relevant today. A computer can never be held accountable. If you think about that. So that is something, isn't it? So as humans, we are accountable for our output. The output that is coming from that internet slop, it's not, ChatGPT isn't accountable for it. It does have guardrails in place, obviously, but we, as the humans, in touch with our own humanity, we are accountable. Okay. And if we don't, this may be the kind of direction we're going in. So a little bit like talking to my kids actually at the moment, but I love this cartoon. You're right if I use ChatGPT for this conversation. So I wanted to end with that. Thanks ever so much for listening. I've gone over a little bit, but it's been an absolute pleasure. And do get in touch with me if you've got any questions, feedback, anything you'd like to say to keep this dialogue going. And that's the code for my LinkedIn, and I've put my email there as well. So many thanks.
Oh, okay. So thank you, Kathy, for a presentation. And now we move into our presenters' presentations. So I'd like to ask Lorenz and Nick to take our internet stage, and over to you.
Right. Hi, everybody. Hope you can all hear me. Let me see if I can get this going. Slideshow. Okay. Come on. Okay. Now I wanted to see the whole thing. Sorry. Try again. Full screen. Ah!
Maybe slideshow. Yeah.
All right. Slideshow's not playing. Let's try again. No. I'm going to stop it and start again. Sorry, everybody. Great start. Okay. Okay. Good. So slideshow from the beginning. No. Okay. Can you see that? I can turn that down. Okay.
It's all good, Nick. We can see it. We can see your overview as well. Are you fine with that?
Yeah, that's okay. Let's get on with it.
Okay.
So, hi everybody. I'm sorry about that. I'm Nick. I'm the Director of Studies at Languages International.
And I'm Lawrence, a teacher at LA.
Okay, so we'd like to share some classroom research using AI to assess pronunciation and provide learners with a study plan. Okay, so first of all, this all started with a case study. I was covering an advanced general English class one day. I asked the learners how they use AI in their language learning studies. 11 out of 12 of them said they just used it as an enhanced dictionary. So for translations, examples of words being used, that kind of thing. And that wasn't particularly interesting. However, Antoine said he used it in a completely different way. And it was really eye-opening for me and for the rest of the class. Basically, when he came to New Zealand, he explained to ChatGPT about his goals and asked it to give him a 3-month study program with regular assessments along the way to help him get from about IELTS 5.5 to about IELTS 7. And that's what he's following. So this was for the students in the group, and for me, this was, as I say, completely eye-opening because I haven't heard of ChatGPT being used in this way for language advising and assessments. So I followed up with a case study. I interviewed him, and I tried to get some more detail about this. Then I got Otter AI to transcribe the interview and produce a summary. And then we organized it into themes. So the themes as they came up, basically the potential for AI to assess and create tailored programs with specific tasks at different levels in the CEFR. It knows the CEFR really well. Although C1 level, Antoine can request explanations in A2 of level for grammar, for example. You can tell it your interests. You can tell it your goals. You can tell it your strengths and weaknesses, and it can assess you as well. Yeah, it's super efficient. So 24/7 support. He says in one sentence, I can ask it to teach me 10 words in English that aren't like French words. That's really powerful. It can give you a test, and it can mark it quicker than your teacher can, for sure. He then gave advice to students about how to use it. He said it's really important with your prompts that you're polite with it and really explicit, really detailed. Give it a role, give it a specific role. Include your goals, include time frame, include your study availability, and all the stuff about how you want to use the language. Okay. He gave some pro tips. He says the key one was he says when he doesn't know how to do something or what AI is capable of, he asks it how it can help him. Yeah. And then he takes an iterative approach. So he's inquisitive with it. It gives him an answer and he quizzes it. And what Kathy was saying before about being critical with what it gives you, I think is really, really valid. Yeah. And then we asked him about teachers and an AI model, and he described working in a sort of hybrid learning environment. So he's got his AI coach, he's got his teachers, and he uses both of them. So some things it can do better than the teacher, but he needs the teacher for motivation, for emotion, for speaking practice, for genuine interaction, for someone who's going to tell him that he's being boring and he needs to get on with it, for a learning dynamic, and human reactions. Yeah. So he needs both his tutor and his coach. And then he's talking about his limitations. And his number one is his motivation. He says, at the end of the day, I'm there with my motivation. I can have this wonderful plan, which is tailored to my needs. But if I don't want to do it, I don't do it. So just to summarize, we asked him what help learners need to get the most out of this potential. And he said you need to learners need to be aware of what it can conceptually do. Yeah, they need help writing prompts. They need from their teacher to be informed about assessment and about language so that they can understand what the information it gives them. They need to understand the CEFR so that they can see where they're going, where the syllabus is going. Maybe they need some technical support. Maybe, and they definitely need motivation and humanity, a human touch and interaction to work alongside this AI coach. Okay. So over to you, Lorenz.
Yes, and we chose to focus on pronunciation learning because that's something that my class needed. And we suspect that they maybe didn't do a lot of work on it outside of class themselves. We wanted to see how a group of students might respond to an opportunity to take control of their own learning and use a tool that they likely had some or even great familiarity with. To get that happening, we first surveyed my B2 level class to understand their attitudes toward pronunciation learning and also to AI as a tool. Just for some background, they were a upper intermediate level general English class that contained learners from different countries such as New Caledonia, France, Thailand, Japan, Taiwan, and mainland China. And there were 7 of them in total, quite a small class. After that survey, Nick piloted a sample assessment and study plan with one student that would allow us to then run it at a larger scale with the full group. They did an assessment and got a 1-week study plan from ChatGPT in a 1-hour session in our learning center. Finally, 1 week after 1 week later, after they'd had time to put the plan into action, we resurveyed them to find out what their experiences had been and if their initial attitudes had shifted in any way. Nick, do you want to talk us through the pilot?
Yeah, maybe you just talk about the
Oh yes, sorry. Yes, the survey
first.
first. The survey first. Yes, of course. We did the survey first. Next slide, please.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. We're doing it live. Don't worry. Next slide,
There,
please.
go.
Yes, of course. These are the questions that we asked them in the survey in advance. The literature has established that learners do, in general, lay a great deal of store by pronunciation learning, and that's reflected in the results of our survey. 100% put it as either extremely or somewhat important to them. And that matches with my experience with them in class. They do ask a lot for pronunciation help. Now, even though they say that it's very important, they don't really prioritize it in their own study time. We wanted to know why, which was the next question. Why do they not? As you can see, 2 of them gave greater importance to other aspects of learning, either right now or in general. Most, however, spoke about confidence in learning independently, about needing guidance and skills, and about not having sufficient understanding of their own shortcomings. As you can see, I don't know my strengths and weaknesses. It's hard to improve in something if you can't see the gaps in your own knowledge, if you don't know what you don't know, as it were. And this exercise is an attempt to think through that problem of independence and skills and about the empowerment that comes out of such. So now, please, Nick, would you like to tell us about the pilot?
Right, okay. So, yes, as Lorraine said, I got a B2 level Thai student in my office on my computer, and I wanted to look at some of these barriers to the support that Antoine had hinted at, and that came up in this in the survey. So we told ChatGPT that it was a pronunciation coach. We told them about the learner. We asked them to assess overall comprehensibility as well as different areas of pronunciation. I didn't really know what was going to work best in terms of providing a spoken sample for ChatGPT to assess. So I said, do we get it to read something, or do we get it to speak? Do we get the person to speak freely into the computer? And they said, do both. So that's what we did. We got the student to read a text comparing the weather in Bangkok and Auckland, and then they talked about their life in New Zealand. Okay. So yeah, the results were pretty amazing, actually. So I was sitting in the office with the learner, listening and making notes as I went along, and it's amazingly accurate. So they rated the learner 6 out of 10 overall for comprehensibility. and they gave the learner the lowest score on connected speech, followed by intonation and then sentence stress. So the idea was we asked the ChatGPT to give a rank out of 10 for each of those areas, which would then facilitate goal setting and future reassessment. Of course, as teachers, like we can all do this kind of assessment with our learners, one-to-one. But for an assessment with this level of detail for pronunciation, I'd need to record it, I need to listen to it, I need to transcribe parts of it, and I'd be looking at 30 minutes probably of analysis before I even started writing it up. The AI one is brutally honest, and it actually feels quite objective as well. So by the time I'd listened to this learner and scrawled some notes, they had written it all up and come out with an improvement plan. And this was just one learner. So in class, we have 12 people in a class. So the potential here for detailed, timely, low stakes, highly individualized assessment, I think is potentially an absolute game changer. Then based on this, we asked it to come up with a 30-minute plan for a 5-day intervention, working for the learner to be working on their own with pronunciation. So we told it that the learner liked fun challenges and studying with other people. And so it tried to integrate these into the plan. And okay, this is one day. So the plan is not rocket science. Again, as a teacher, we could do this with a learner. But the potential for scalability and learner control with the plan, again, is an absolute game changer, I think. And remember what Antoine said about being iterative about it. So you get a plan, and then there's bits you like, there's bits you don't like. You go back and you ask it, and it revises it. Okay. So then we went back to the class, Lorenz.
Yes. We then took my class into our learning center to put it into practice. And that session was, let's say, a qualified success. In our 60-minute session, 5 of our 7 learners managed to get a plan and an assessment done. 1 didn't finish, and we also had 1 opt out, refusing the premise, rejecting the premise entirely. You can see some of that learner's comments: too hard, I want to study with a teacher, it's not worth the effort, I'll just do something else. So we have to remember that this kind of exercise and this kind of technology won't work for everyone. It won't match their attitudes to or their preferences for learning. It's always important to keep that in mind. And in general, our learners were also very hesitant, very unconfident and self-conscious when they were asked to record their samples in front of their classmates. 1 even had to segregate himself in another class room so the others wouldn't hear him recording himself. However, for the 5 who did manage to get the assessment and plan done, the results were quite promising. They were in-depth and, based on my own experience with them in class, quite accurate. However, not all the learners were confident in their ability to interpret the analyses for themselves. They didn't quite know what it meant, what it was telling them. On top of that, we also had quite a few tech issues. There's a difference between a guest user not logged into ChatGPT and a free account that is logged in. The capabilities differ. For example, you can't upload files as a guest. So we had to get the students logged in, which proved surprisingly difficult. As well as that, we also had to have them record the sample in a separate application, and from that application upload the file onto the platform. So a real array of tech savviness was on display there in our learners. Some of it quite surprising considering the extent of their own device use. And then finally, our trial was hampered by my becoming sick, as you can perhaps still hear in my voice. So I wasn't able to provide the encouragement and the support that I'd wanted to offer them during the trial week. So our results perhaps are a little bit skewed by that too. Nick? Nick? Oh, you're frozen.
Okay, so and there were heaps of oh, okay, try again. Okay. All right, try again. So things didn't really go to plan. The learners weren't sufficiently on board with the whole process. There were heaps of technical problems, and then Lorenz got sick, and there wasn't sufficient teacher and human kind of moderation of this whole scheme. But we resurveyed the students anyway. Overall, they said they did about the same amount of focus on pronunciation as they would normally. In terms of the plan, one of them in particular said it was really accurate. They were reasonably positive about the plan. Sorry, the assessment. In terms of the plan, yeah, it was okay. They were okay with that. But without the teacher moderation, they sort of forgot about it. Okay, so and then Lorenz?
Yes, probably the most interesting question in our follow-up survey then was about whether they would want to use it themselves going forward independently. And their responses that we've put up here for you, they highlight some important issues. We've again got the divergent attitudes toward learning. Some simply like face-to-face communication more. I prefer to study with a real person teacher. Teacher can communicate with me face to face. A conversation with an invested teacher allows them to explore things together without having to be expert prompters in AI. I like to have an interaction with people. It's easy to check and ask more. I think it's better than AI. For some people, this communication is simply irreplaceable. For others, as you can see at the top, it's the opposite. We had one student who struggles with social phobia, and that student quite liked the absence of human-to-human communication. And that response, of course, opens up a whole other discussion that was addressed quite well in the keynote address about the importance of language as an oral communication tool. But for some people who are averse to that, perhaps this is exactly the sort of thing that they need. And then one also spoke about the power of AI. I think it was helpful because the AI expressed what my weaknesses were, and it was easy for me to understand what was wrong. For some people, this provides a very powerful tool.
Okay, so where are we up to with all this? First of all, the ability to assess in detail at speed and advise in this way is truly impressive. Then, of course, there's also the potential to reassess, and this will all get better as tech improves and different applications integrate better.
Yeah, and those improvements obviously will only be as powerful as the users who know how to manage them. Learners need support and training in creating the prompts and understanding the responses, as we saw in our Learning Center session. They also need knowledge from the classroom. For example, in a meta language of pronunciation, they need to know what a syllable is, what stress means, what connected speech means. What is this response even telling them?
And so the more learners know about the process of learning, the better. They need to understand the CEFR and know what about language so they know what to ask and what the results mean. Our learners basically need informed training.
And part of that training in the implementation with a larger class, not just in this trial, would need a focused build-up, work done in advance, discussions together about the sort of issues that we asked about in our pre-survey, their experiences and previous problems with a platform like this. And of course, an in-depth explanation of what we're trying to accomplish together. The teacher would have to monitor, to support, to remind. I wasn't there to remind them of the plan that they had forgotten about.
Okay, so we shared this with our teachers. Lots of them were not aware of the capability of AI to assess, and in sort of low stakes situations like this, it is genuinely eye-opening.
Yeah, and then as people's eyes are opened, we have to focus ourselves. We have to focus as teachers on what we need to contribute to be genuinely working in that hybrid way that our student Antoine was talking about.
Okay, so back to Antoine. These are his quotes. At the end of the day, it's just me and my motivation. Yeah. And it's that last bit, the role of the teacher to provide expertise, guidance, encouragement, emotion, humanity, and an experience. And that's what will keep us in our jobs and keep our learners coming back. So we'll finish off with a quote. So stay curious, proceed with caution, and remain courageously human. Okay. We're really happy to chat. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Lorenz and Nick. We're going to jump right into our next presenter, which will be Diana.
Of course not. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my presentation on Mind Your Manners, Interpersonal Communication in the Age of AI. My name's Diana, and I am the Director of Studies at Language Studies International in Auckland. Just a little bit about me. I like to call myself a nomad, or as my brother would say, a modern-day gypsy. I've moved around most of my life. I've taught in several countries on 3 different continents, all different age groups, variety of subjects, and 3 different languages. So I will begin by briefly introducing how I got to this topic in the first place. As DOS, every Monday we have new students and I conduct speaking interviews with them. And one of my questions always is, what brings you to New Zealand? And you'd be surprised how many students forget to mention that it's to improve their language skills. Many of them respond by saying that they would like to meet people from different countries. They would like to explore a different part of the world, or for an experience like a work experience. Also at graduation every Friday, when students come up and make a speech, which is normally so emotional, most of them will mention that they've improved their English skills, but what they go on and on about are the beautiful connections that they made with people from all over the world and how much they've learned from that and gained. And they talk about their travel experiences more than language. And so this is something that AI just can't replace. So a couple months ago, I was having dinner with friends, and one of my friends asks, what are your manners like with ChatGPT? And I haven't been using ChatGPT for too long up till now, but I thought to myself, well, I'm very direct and quite rude. But some of them joked that they're very polite just in case AI takes over the world and remembers those who were nice to them. And that's when a light bulb went off in my mind, and I thought to myself already how all those instances how we communicate with students on different platforms and how it's changed over time already. And now suddenly I thought, I wonder how students are communicating with robots. So the purpose of my presentation is to raise awareness that using generative AI may lead to a decline in students' interpersonal and social emotional skills. I will predominantly be focused on ChatGPT in this presentation to help facilitate and guide appropriate discourse in the ESL classroom, to consider diverse methods of teaching and assessing with the use of innovative technologies, to remind educators of the importance of teacher agency in the age of AI, and most importantly, to remain in harmony as a society. So just some questions to think about while I'm presenting. Do you use your manners while using ChatGPT? Do you think that AI can foster manners, cultural differences, and real-life situations that are authentic? And how do you think ChatGPT will alter the way students communicate in the future? Just to start off, what are some reasons that students take ESL classes? So it's to improve employment opportunities. It could be to integrate better in society, to develop those life skills, and or to access certain services and benefits. And what do all these points have in common? Well, they're all related to real life situations and people. So I'm going to take you back to COVID times. I'm sorry, I know. But that's when we were all forced to communicate solely online using different platforms. And that's when I started writing my research paper, which I'm not going to dive into. So my colleague and I, Ash, we were focused on methods and tools used during online collaborative writing. But what I want you to consider is in the experiment, these were human-to-human interactions with students from all over the world, and yet they still had a difficult time understanding certain emotional and cultural differences through written dialogue. So this is in an educational setting. I'm also going to share a personal experience when I was in Australia, and let's say I had met someone, and at the beginning you get excited and you want to be funny and flirty. And so through text, I would try to be funny. However, unfortunately, my Canadian deadpan sense of humor did not translate well at all with the Australians. And so they either got offended or thought I was being very rude. Ah, those Aussies. But besides the point, it goes to show the need for human-to-human interaction to better understand cultural differences, humor, social cues, etc. How will a robot pick up on these type of instances? Now, which type of robot am I referring to? ChatGPT, which stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. It does sound pretty cool though, right? For those who don't know what ChatGPT is, just briefly, it's one tool that can help create and generate ideas as human-like possible, put simply. There are positives and negatives, like there is with everything. However, our focus is on the lack of emotional intelligence. So ChatGPT may lack appropriate discourse and or empathy. Now, effective communication that's been applied to ChatGPT includes the 7 C's here on the left. We are going to concentrate on courtesy, So ChatGPT is supposed to maintain a polite and respectful tone. However, again, it may lack that genuine understanding of emotions and human context, which leads us into interpersonal skills and social emotional learning that generative AI cannot replace. Just a quick overview of the difference between these two terms. So interpersonal skills refers to the external interactions, whereas social emotional learning encompasses both the intra and intern. So you have the internal emotional behaviors as well as the social behaviors. And these play a key role in our ESL classrooms. And we don't want to lose these skills because of new technologies. Just a quick quote to keep in mind. The human teacher brings expertise in pedagogy, subject knowledge, and emotional intelligence, while the generative AI teacher offers versatile information processing capabilities, personalized learning suggestions, and data-driven feedback. ESL classroom curriculum textbooks do offer already instances where students can practice real-life scenarios. For example, emails, blogs, writing advertisements. But what does that really look like in reality on a day-to-day basis with teachers and students? So I've used some examples from a few different platforms, and just to show a couple here. While students are using WhatsApp, so we've been using WhatsApp for a long time now, and what I've noticed is students show either a lot of enthusiasm or they're just very direct between teacher and student. But the main thing that I've noticed with WhatsApp is that it does remain very informal when students are writing to a teacher. So as you can see, there are about 4 exclamation marks, emojis included. So WhatsApp can be quite informal. While students use emails, so previously when I was teaching, I would get students to email me their assignments. And I would say the majority of the time there was no subject line, there was no email, only the attachment. And the only reason why I knew that it was from that particular student is because their name was in the email address. Here too are some examples of students sending their CVs to the receptionists. So as you can see, again, no subject line, just fragments, direct requests, and then at the bottom you do have a more formal email example. I had the opportunity to ask several students in our school who use ChatGPT from elementary level to advanced level. And I did notice a few trends. One of the trends that I noticed is that a lot of them are requests, and they're quite demanding requests, not very polite, as you can see in this example here, or examples here, sorry. I want watch a video before. And please be mindful that we're not focusing here on grammar and vocabulary. We're solely focusing on how they are communicating with the application. Another example are fragments. So many students just will use 2 words or half a sentence. They won't write the full sentence. And the most common trend that I notice are that students are just translating. And surprisingly, these are also students at higher levels. So the one on the left is an intermediate student who's asking to translate birthday wishes. And on the right, it's an upper intermediate student who uses ChatGPT daily to journal. And so they'll translate it in English and then they'll ask ChatGPT to polish it and make it more formal. Now, idioms. Idioms are integral to achieving linguistic proficiency. And one study showed that there are many exercises teachers can use to create examples or to help students understand idioms. But you will not receive an idiomatic expression from AI during a natural dialogue. As for teaching and assessing, it's it's more about formative assessment, and it's finding those opportunities where while you are communicating with students using this variety of different platforms, providing maybe a mini lesson and some feedback so that the teacher can showcase these real case models, what's appropriate behavior and appropriate language use in certain contexts. So what it could look like, for example, is let's just use ChatGPT. With your class, they're doing an exercise, they're using ChatGPT. You go around and you start to notice how they're communicating, right? And just write it down. Maybe write 1 or 2 or 3 examples on the board, and then get the students to question. So explain to them, okay, this is what I noticed. This is how the student asked ChatGPT. Now, what type of request do you think this is? Would you ask this type of question in this type of format to your mom or to your teacher? And then decide together whether this is polite, impolite, is it demanding? So this is just creating that awareness, and remembering that it's important that students do recognize these differences. So to conclude, as educators, it's really important to find those opportunities to teach and assess appropriate discourse while using generative AI to maintain those interpersonal skills and social emotional learning skills. Technology should complement, not detract from human connection in educational processes. So we need to work with technology sustainably. Presentation complete. No, just joking. I want to say a huge thank you to English New Zealand and LanguageCert for organizing this event and giving me this opportunity. And thank you all who joined us today, and an extra big shout out to my amazing team at LSI. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Diana. Let's jump straight into our next presentation from Aniko. Over to you, Aniko.
Thank you. Just a sec. Yeah. Thank you for being here. My name is Aniko, and I would like to start with a simple question. A simple but one I believe every teacher and every student should ask at the very beginning of their journey. And no worries, it is not a test yet. You don't need to actually answer the question, but I would like to think about it. And the question is, what is the goal of assessment? What is the goal of it? Is it simply about to measure what students know? Is it about numbers and scores and levels? Or could it be something more meaningful? Could it be something that actually helps students grow, stay motivated, get motivated, and take ownership of their own learning? And I know it was more than one question, and probably not simple. I hope these are not simple questions, because assessment shouldn't be simple, because language learning is anything but simple. So this is my goal here today, to answer these questions and to give some practical tools how to achieve it, how to make assessment meaningful. First of all, we need to shift our perspective from assessment as a traditional measurement to complex assessment as an ongoing, dynamic, and responsive process. A process where the evidence of learning can be used to adapt our teaching, and a process where students take ownership through self-reflection and self-assessment. Okay, but how does it look like in a classroom? How can we actually achieve it? So here are the practical goals. If we rethink assessment this way, we can make some really powerful and practical goals, not just making it more engaging, meaningful, and effective for the students, but we can also reduce teacher workload. And this is important. Studies show that teachers spend up to 30% of their time on some form of assessment-related tasks inside and outside the classroom. And that's huge. So the idea is to turn assessment into something personal, engaging, and motivating, not just for the students, but for the teachers as well. And why do we need to do that? Honestly, have you ever had a student saying on a test day before the exam, yay, exam? They don't react like that. They don't like exams and tests. And again, studies show that it is stressful and downright demotivating for students. They don't remember the score. It is a one-way direction. Teachers give the grade, the score, students receive it. And they don't know how to use it in their journey. They don't know how to understand, how to build these skills and results to improve. They don't understand. And probably the worst part of it, it's easily forgotten. They don't even remember what was the result the day before. So I love showing this comparison because it highlights something we often overlook. We focus on formative and summative assessment, and we feel like that self-assessment is the student's responsibility. It is, but do they know how to use it? And something what we really overlook here is the emotional impact. If we talk about formative assessment, something when it is well done, it supports progress, while summative assessment is stressful. And I'm an IELTS teacher, so I know what I'm talking about. It is stressful, and it is stressful for a reason. So I'm not saying we should get rid of summative assessment. I'm just saying that maybe we should balance it to outweigh the disadvantages, making it as a whole process more engaging for the students. And this is not just based on intuition, there's strong research behind it. I won't go into all the details here because of time, of course, but I included all the references I used at the end in case you would like to explore them further. What I would like to do is just like, well, the results of these, and I think it is something that we really should focus on. So all these research works actually highlighted that it improved self-assessment. Using self-assessment with summative and formative assessment improved their grades. And it made not just the learning process, but the exam, the assessment as well, motivating. And students became able to identify strengths and weaknesses. And I feel like this is something that we should fight for. So, my initiative, so how does it really look like in practice? I wanted to create something low effect for the teachers and high impact for the students, combining formative, summative, and self-assessment to use all the emotional impact. For that, I created tools and steps, and I'm going to show you. But the most important thing I want to highlight here is that self-reflection is not automatic. It is a skill, and as any other skill, it is learnable. It can be taught, and it does not increase teacher workload. And please believe me here, because I had the opportunity to, well, experiment with over 50 students and over 6 months so far, mostly exam preparation classes. And let's see how it works really in practice. The first step, we need to teach them how self-reflection actually works, because they don't know. If you ask your students, what do you find difficult? Probably they are going to say English. English is difficult and English is crazy. And what do you find easy? Nothing. What are your strengths and weaknesses? They don't know. And how to solve the problem until we don't identify the problem. And here they need our help. We need to teach them how to do that. So I used surveys to identify these problems. For example, when we were talking about their reading skills, I gave them a survey including 18 questions divided into reading skills, reading habits, and things like how you handle unknown vocabulary. So it was a really, really guided survey to help them understand what are their weaknesses and what are their strengths. And the most rewarding part was that aha moment that, okay, now I understand. So actually, they realized it with help, what they need to work on. And that was powerful. Yeah, we use it for the speaking as well. It is more difficult when it is not measurable, because listening and reading is more measurable. But when it comes to speaking and writing, it's more difficult to put your finger on it. The next step is using checklists for clarity. It is still guided, but less guided. And you can kill two birds with one stone here, because you can teach self-reflection. For example, when it comes to the writing in IELTS. So with guided questions, they can actually realize what they are doing well and where they have their difficulties. And it can be also used in peer feedback, because usually when it comes to peer feedback, best case scenario, they encourage their partners, oh yeah, good job. But why? And what could I do to improve my speaking? So they do need some guided help here. Our third step was reducing my guidance and to use checklists for understand that they have the safe space here. And actually it was a checklist for me as well, to see whether they can use what we already learned in step 1 and step 2. And that was incredibly rewarding. And talking about how it can reduce teachers' workload, I just needed to give them a 2-question card about positive and negative things. Of course, we didn't use the word negative or weakness. We named them challenges. And I could just enjoy my cup of tea walking around, and they used incredibly well everything we learned before. So some of my students' notes, I don't know whether you can read it, but it's just amazing. I'm super proud of them. They let me experiment on them, so I'm biased here. And they see the progress. They see what they are working for. And even if they realize it's not working, they know how to change it or how to try where and when to try new strategies. So right now we are on step 4, and we've been able to do that because it doesn't matter whenever I had new students, the new students actually were mentored and taught by the experienced students. So the students who already knew the drill, they taught the others how to use it. And it was not just more meaningful, but quicker. Because maybe they accept what the teacher says, maybe they do as it is, but when a classmate says, oh, you should do that, it works, they actually do it. So I gave them the online version. If they are tech savvy, we also have the paper version. This is their own. They have their own personalized Excel files individually, only have access their own, and I'm the only one who can access to all of them. And again, talking about teachers' workload, I don't need to track their results anymore, not even the scores. They do that for me. They know it's their responsibility. And if they don't remember, well, there's the Excel file. From 3 different students, it might be too much to handle first, but this is all they're doing. They don't need guidance anymore. They put their scores based on their skills. They use, I'm going to show you a template here. Yes. So I tried to make it as effortless as possible so they can reflect on their feelings. And based on the color codes, more green they have, the better the safe place achieved, actually. And when it comes to, for example, difficulties, they can choose. And they can also edit it, so it is a personalized version. And just to make it effortless, you know, when they need to type, when they need to write on their own, especially in English, they just won't even start. So coming back to the slide, yes, they love the drop down. They never ever skip the drop down version, and they also write their own thoughts there. And I mentioned we also have the paper version for those who actually prefer writing with their own hands. And they also learned how to, well, we learned together how to set goals, measurable, smart goals, achievable goals. And that is, again, powerful. So that goal is not anymore, I want to improve my English. Okay, but it's an ongoing battle, a never-ending battle. So right now their goals is like, I want to be able to finish the writing next time. And they can also reflect on it. Yes, this is from a student, for example, and this is their doing again. So reducing teachers' workload, again, I just enjoy my cup of tea. And they are extremely engaged here. And the self-reflection. The best part I would like to highlight here, that of course sometimes it happens that they don't achieve their goals and they realize it on their own, and they won't freak out because of it, because they already feel the progress. They know that they tried, they did their best. So they realize it on their own, and it was super rewarding to see how to move on, whether they need to just change their strategies, or the strategy was okay, they only need practice. So the self-reflection is meaningful. From the students, my favorite is the third one. It felt good to say what I found hard without being said. So talking about summative assessment is stressful. It is still stressful, but it is the positive, if stress can be positive type, it is the positive type that encourages them to move on and to fight for their goals. So we actually achieved an emotional safe place, and it is an IELTS class we are talking about. They have summative assessment on a weekly basis. About the results, they feel safe, they feel heard, and they are curious about their own progress. And I think it is powerful. They know how to use it, and they know what is the next step. They remember. And whenever we have the self-reflection again, sometimes they check the papers, they have the Excel file, but they actually remember. And I think this is again meaningful. They know why they made the mistake. So right now, it is not an obstacle for them to understand their scores. They do understand their scores. And I don't need to be there to explain. And now they feel, of course, they are still stressed about assessment, but they see it as more as an opportunity, not judgment or not something they should be really, really afraid. And thank you so much. And the reference list I missed.
Thank you, Aniko. And
Thank you.
thank you so much. And now our last presentation. Thank you all for staying on. Really appreciate your support to the fellow presenters. And I'd like to welcome Ian to jump in and take the virtual stage. Thanks, Ian.
All right, just give me a second. Can everybody hear me and see the presentation?
Yes, all good.
Yes.
Cool. Awesome. Well, hello everybody. My name is Ian. I work for NZLC. Have been working for them for quite a while now. I teach exams there as well, just similar to Aniko. My presentation is actually going to nicely dovetail into hers. Now, all the responsible adults have spoken, and now it leaves you with me. Now, I would like to begin by actually by saying that I don't think anybody would disagree that why is it not working? There we go. Speaking a language is actually a skill. And I'd like to start with a quote from a very world-renowned theorist in the field of skill development, this gentleman here. That is Bruce Lee, of all people. And he made a very interesting quote. Oopsie, sorry. And I'm going to show you this quote, and I'm going to give you a couple of seconds. Please look at it. It was made about martial arts, but it is applicable, at least in my opinion, to English. Can you think about its application in English? How about if I rephrase it this way? Now, of course, if we give less, it gives our students a lot more opportunities to practice more. And this statement might lead us into the discussion of whether we should teach English as a series of structures and structural approach, or teach it more holistically like TBLT. Not the point. The point I want to discuss today is whether we should give them comprehensive feedback, as in feedback on many different errors, or focused feedback, focusing on one or two errors. And to get us in the mood, to get us thinking, I'd like you to have a look at a couple of statements, and I'll give you half a minute-ish to read through them. Think about how applicable they are, how true they are for you. Feel free to talk to people around you if you have anybody. If you don't have anybody, just talk to yourself. Perfectly normal. Now, well, excuse me, just need to switch this on. Now, in our context, I've seen a lot of students pestering their teachers saying, what about this? What about this? Am I saying this right? I've seen students come in and complain about their teachers saying, oh, I made a mistake in class and my teacher did not correct me. So they always want more. I've seen a lot of teachers who spend, and just like Aniko mentioned, spend a lot of time sitting down, marking, writing assessments, putting all of those beautiful lines and corrections and error codes. And there's definitely a feeling of safety in a well annotated, well underlined piece of student writing, both for the student and the teacher. However, excuse me, have a look. What I'd like to suggest today is that maybe, just maybe, giving feedback on a lot of errors is not the best way to do it. It might actually be counterproductive. In order to do that, I'd like you to think about comprehensive feedback, many, many, many different errors. How does it affect our students? How does it affect their confidence? How does it affect their production fluency? How does it affect their actual ability to respond to the feedback we give them? I'll give you a couple of seconds. Think about it. Talk to your partner. Feel free to use the chat if you want. All right. Hopefully you've had a chat. Here is, again, your experience may vary. This is my take on it. How does it affect their confidence? I remember just starting at NZLC, and I was meticulously giving my students feedback on their speaking, most of the mistakes. And I overheard two of the students talking. One of them said, what are we going to learn in the feedback? And the other one said, that our speaking is bad. And I just thought to myself, is that the only thing they actually get out of my feedback? Is that the main message? So to me, I would say that giving comprehensive feedback raises anxiety and it lowers speaking confidence. It has a very powerful knock-on effect on fluency because it gives this false impression to the students that in order for you to produce either spoken text or written text, it needs to be either 100% correct or close to correct. And obviously, it lowers fluency because students become obsessed with saying everything correctly. Also, it makes them play it safe, stick to the things they know well, where they don't make mistakes, and thus they avoid taking risks, avoid complexity. Now, in terms of how there are opportunities for response to feedback, well, especially in writing, if we want to give them comprehensive feedback, it's probably going to be sometime after the task, right? So they won't be able to respond to it hot, maybe do a similar task right away. And even if they do, if I give them 10 things to focus on, how many times will they realistically be able to practice? Now, hopefully, I've sown some seeds of doubt in your hearts as to its effectiveness. Now, if it's not comprehensive feedback, then what's the alternative? And the alternative is focused feedback. Give them feedback on one or two error types. So let's say today you need to work on present simple and past simple or singular plural, and that's it. Now, of course, no negative feedback is pleasant, so it does dampen their confidence a little bit, but not as much as comprehensive feedback. In terms of fluency, it is a fair argument to say that accuracy and complexity are on different sides of the scales and they compete for attention, but this gives you a good balance. And of course, if you only give them one or two things to work on, they have opportunities to get the volume of practice to do it again and again and again until they adjust and improve. Well, we've established that, yeah, maybe it's a good idea. Out of all the range of all this variety of mistakes that our students make, how do we choose what to focus on? For your pleasure, I have assembled a series of questions, but the questions are with gaps. Please discuss them with your partner. Can you fill in the gaps? Feel free to leave the answers in the chat. Mhm. Okay, let's have a look at the answers. As we're checking the answers, I'd like you to think about, of all these 6 questions, in your teaching context, which ones would be more relevant, which ones would be less relevant? In our context, of course, number one would be the king. If you have a goal for the lesson, obviously you don't want to detract from it. But apart from that, 2 and 4 would probably be the main goals because most of our students want to communicate and they want to be understood and they want to understand others. And of course, number 4 is quite important for respect reasons. They want to be accepted and respected. Other questions depending on the goals of your students and the context. Now, we've established our questions, we've chosen our mistakes. How do we give them to our students? Do we just say, oh, focus on your past simple. You're using present simple instead of past. Off you go, check your writing or check your speaking next time. Needs a bit more scaffolding than that. Let's talk about some scaffolding suggestions. And as I talk at you during these slides, please think about, do you think this is something you would try? Do you think this is something your students would be able to do? Now, the first suggestion is think about the mistakes typical for your students and create a sample answer, weaving those mistake types into it, 1 or 2. These mistakes can stick out like a sore thumb in that sample answer. Then you can get your students to analyze it and to see them, to start training them to actually notice errors, because this will help them overcome this feeling, oh, I can't do it. I can't find my own mistakes. Only the teacher can do it. Oh, they can do it as well. And after they do it with the sample, they can start looking at their own writing or their partner's writing if they're brave enough. Now, another thing you can do if the student persists and says, no, I can't find it, you can underline all examples of one error type in their writing and say, hey, I've underlined it, correct it. This is a very, very heavily scaffolded and teacher-supported version. A less teacher-supported version is, let's say they make mistakes with present simple and past simple, singular and plural. Highlight the sentences that contain errors. So you locate the problematic areas for the student. What they need to do is they need to decide which error type it is and how to fix it. So a little bit more autonomy there, a little bit less scaffolding. And this one is even less. Let's say they make a lot of mistakes with plurals. Instead of underlining or highlighting, you just say, hey, in this paragraph, you made 6 mistakes with that. In this paragraph, you made 3. In this paragraph, you made 7. This is already a little bit more autonomous. This gives them a little bit more room to maneuver and agency. Needs a bit of build up to it. This is as far as writing is concerned. As far as speaking, this was something that was already discussed today. Get your students to, excuse me, I need to check the time. Get your students to record themselves in speaking. They will resist this violently. They will say, no, teacher, I do not want, my phone is not working, if something is happening. Get them to do it. Get them to listen back, and this will help them to start building an awareness of what they're saying and also increase their accuracy. Then, if they're brave enough, you can get them to swap with their partner and listen to their partner's writing or speaking. A more focused version of that is for them to listen to their own recording and to transcribe it and focus on 1 or 2 error types in that transcription. Finally, after you've introduced an error, they've analyzed their previous writing or speaking, you can get to practice. You can pair them up and you can ask them to give each other a cue. For example, raise a finger, raise a pencil, if they make a particular mistake type. Let's say they use present simple instead of past simple, their partner goes. Interesting thing about it, though, it teaches not only the speaker, but also the person who corrects them. It raises their awareness and makes them more accurate, makes them more focused on their own speaking and its accuracy. Sorry, just a bit nervous about it. Right. Now, we've talked a little bit about training our students, but as was already mentioned today, we want to train our students to train AI to give them good feedback. And if you ask AI, hey, here is my speaking, please give me feedback on it as an open question, it will give you feedback, but it'll be very complex, convoluted, and quite unhelpful, to be honest. You need to be specific. As a lesson, you can train your students to actually introduce and narrow down the topic. Let's say, let's talk about this topic or that topic. If we're talking about IELTS, you can say, okay, speaking part 1. Let's talk about hobbies. You can specify your English level. You can ask AI, look, this is my English level. Can you give me 1 or 2 grammar points that I need to work on? Not everything. You can be even more specific. You can say, I am working on my plural S. Can you please show me mistakes only with plural S? And you can ask it to transcribe your speech. And you can ask it to tell you how many times you made a mistake with a particular grammar point. Wonderful. Now, there is one very big obstacle to this kind of training, and that is the students themselves. It is an absolute truth that students always want more feedback than teachers are comfortable giving them, and they always demand it. How do you go about it? How do you get them on your side? This is where student buy-in comes in. You need to persuade them that your method actually works. And one very good way to do that is to actually talk to them about the theory behind your classroom practice. Get them to reflect on why you're doing things. Very few teachers do that, and when they actually do, it works amazingly. Get them to reflect on the questions that we reflected on today. Get them to think about, okay, if I give you corrections on everything you say, how will it affect your confidence? How will it affect your fluency? How will it affect your ability to actually put it into practice, what I taught you? Very often they don't think about those things. And when you ask them, they suddenly go, ah, yeah, you're actually right. Once you do this, once you go through the practice of the lesson, what do you think you need to do at the end of the lesson? Reflect some more. Get them to think about, in concrete terms, and preferably writing it down, things about, what did I do well today? What is the one thing that I need to improve? How and when will I work on it? How can I check my progress? This will give them a feeling that they did learn something. It wasn't a lot, but it was something small and actionable. Now, before we finish, now everybody's tired and hungry. Oh, sorry. Just a little word of caution. Please remember that focused feedback is not a silver bullet. It's not something that works everywhere, one size fits all. And sometimes, no matter how often you tell your student that they're making a mistake, no matter how much they work on it, they simply will not get it because acquisition order. Sometimes students are just not developmentally ready to do something yet. Also, don't view these things as mutually exclusive. Think of focused feedback and comprehensive feedback as two extremes of a climb. And where you are on this climb depends on you and your context. You can think about certain factors, of course, which will help you decide. Think about the aims. Are you doing formative assessment or summative assessment? Is this just for the examiner or for the test taker as well? If it's summative assessment, probably comprehensive would be better. If it's formative, probably focused would be better, just like Aniko said today, that if you give them something short and actionable, it makes it a lot easier for them to work on. Also, think about your students' expectations. Just like we discussed, if it's something unfamiliar, something new to them, and they don't think it works, it probably won't. You need to persuade them. And finally, what are the established practices in your school? If you throw in something revolutionary at your teachers, they don't know why they're doing it, they don't know how, it probably won't work. Start with explaining the whys and the hows. And that's it from me. Here are some references that I've used. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Ian. Okay, so that brings us to the end, and I'm sorry we've gone a little bit over time, so I know you're all very limited with the timing, and I do want to get to the voting. So I'm just going to put up again for you the criteria. And I hope we can continue discussion and exchange information after the webinar. This is just a start to get a conversation happening around great assessment practices. But just a reminder, we're looking at clarity, we're looking at engagement, practicality, and innovation and creativity. And before we go into the vote, I just wanted to thank all the presenters for putting in all of the effort that you did for making these great presentations. And thank you to everyone who stuck out the full 2 hours to get to the most exciting part, of course, which is who's going to be coming to the Wikipedia Fest. I'm just pulling up a QR code here, and if you can all just get your phone, the QR code will come up in a minute, and this is your vote for the most engaging presenter. Now, presenters can vote as well, and it's anonymous, but we will see the scores in a minute. So I'm just going to open now the voting. We'll keep it open for a minute or so, and if you can just take a shot of the QR code and submit your vote for the most engaging presenter. So we've got a couple of votes coming in. I feel like we're kind of doing a Eurovision song contest here. 4 votes, 6, 12 votes, 13 votes. I think we've got close to over 30 people in the webinar, so please do put in your vote. So while we're waiting for the last set of votes, do check out LanguageCert, our website, and we've got lots of teacher training materials and teacher resources for prepping your students for the test. And we'd love to continue the dialogue with you around your great ideas for assessment. So thank you once again to all the participants, to the presenters, and thank you to English New Zealand for the opportunity to run this webinar. So here we go. I think we've got most of the votes in. We shall now see who is the winner. Congratulations, Ian. Well done, Ian. You are first, and congratulations. I will have to stop the voting now, otherwise, it's going to change. But I need to actually stop the vote. Congratulations, Ian. Thank you very much. We'll be in touch about arrangements to come over to Australia. Thank you to everyone, and have an awesome evening. Thank you.
Thanks,
See you
Patrick.
later,
Thanks,
everybody.
everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Fraser.
Thanks, Kim. See ya.
Thank you, everyone,
Bye.
for sticking around.
Thank you all. Ta-da.
Yeah, bye. Well done, Ian.
Thank you, presenters.
Brilliant.
Well done, everyone. Thank you for doing this.